Hello everyone, myself Rashmi Arora, Assistant Professor Pharmacology, Chameli Devi Institute of Pharmacy. Today I have picked up a very interested and common topic, hypertension, that is high blood pressure and the pharmacology of antihypertensive agents. In the subsequent slides, we will discuss about what the hypertension is and how it can be treated with the help of pharmacotherapy. Facing the present. Hypertension basically is a disease which earlier targets the old age people, but the today scenario says that it hits the younger generation too. Earlier the guidelines were if the blood pressure is systolic 120 mmHg and diastolic pressure in aorta is 80 mmHg, then it is considered to be normal. But due to our bad habits and the changed lifestyle, FDA has changed the older guidelines into newer ones. Those are normal blood pressure considered to be systolic 110 mmHg and diastolic 70 mmHg. Also, a point to be noted here that blood pressure is highest in the arteries as compared to the veins. The reason behind the hypertension are lifestyle, poor lifestyle, busy life, no time for self, obesity, bad habits of having junk foods, unhealthy food habits, lot of stress, it could be mental stress or physical stress, and the old age. Hypertension is regulated by various mechanisms like renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, which increases the blood volume and thereby increasing the pressure exerted on the walls by the blood. Sympathetic stimulation, that is vasoconstriction, increase in sodium ion concentration, which progressively causes the increase in calcium ion concentration and potentiate the contraction in the vessels. Baroreceptor mechanism, Rho kinase pathway, kinin system, and endothelins. Basically, ventricular pressure is difficult to measure, and arterial pressure assumed to indicate the driving pressure of the blood flow. As well, the atrial pressure is pulsatile, and we have to achieve a correct value of the driving pressure. So, for that, we measure the mean arterial pressure. The mean arterial pressure is basically the diastolic pressure plus 1/3 the pulse pressure. Mean arterial pressure is influenced by the cardiac output and peripheral resistance. Here the equation says that mean arterial pressure, that is blood pressure, is directly proportional to the cardiac output and the peripheral resistance in the arterioles. Blood volume is basically fairly constant due to the hemostatic mechanism which get regulated by the kidneys through renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. When the blood pressure is too low, then the driving force of the blood is unable to overcome the gravity and the oxygen supplies thereby decrease down to the brain, and which leads to the different symptoms like syncope, etc. And if the blood pressure is too high, then it causes the weakening of arterial walls, which is also known as aneurysm, and there is an increased risk of rupturing of the vessels and hemorrhage takes place internally. Also, this can lead to the cerebral hemorrhage and the rupture of major arteries. Sphygmomanometry is a method by which we can evaluate the blood pressure. Basically, oscillation on the brachiocephalic arteries with the stethoscopes we are using, and then we measure the laminar flow versus the turbulence flow. This is how the oscillation takes place on the brachiocephalic artery, and we note down the pressure of a patient. This is sphygmomanometer, which comprises of a tight band, a stethoscope, and a mercury manometer. Now, the pressure in the arteries, veins, and the heart chambers are basically the result of the pumping action. Right and left ventricles have the similar waveforms, but they have the different pressures. Also, right and left atria, they have the similar waveform with pressures that are similar but not identical. So, this is the major difference between the right and left ventricles and right and left atrial waveforms. Now coming down to the pharmacotherapy of hypertension, there are various classes, a long list of drugs are available to treat the hypertensive patients. We have diuretics, beta blockers, ACE inhibitors, angiotensin 2 receptor blockers. We have calcium channel blockers, alpha blockers, combined alpha and beta blockers, alpha 2 receptor agonists, and vasodilators. So there is a long list of classification which is used to treat the hypertension. Before we moving down to the particular classification, we should know the drug treatment. This chart describes when and to whom we should give A type of therapy and C or D type of therapy. A stands for ACE inhibitors, C stands for calcium channel blockers, and D stands for thiazide diuretics. If the patient is less than 55 years and he has or she has hypertension, then we should put him or her on angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors if angiotensin receptor blockers are intolerant, because angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors and angiotensin receptor blockers, they both are equally potent, but ACE inhibitors, they are associated with a intolerable dry cough. That is why they have been overcome by ARBs. So if ARBs are intolerant in less than 55 years of patients, then we should switch them to ACE inhibitors. Similarly, if the patient age is more than 55 years or equal to 55 years, then we should opt calcium channel blockers and thiazide diuretics. And then subsequently maintenance therapy could be with the alpha blocker or beta blocker. It depends upon the physician who will take care of what drug is to be used in a better way for that particular patient. So first of all, diuretics. The major type of diuretics used to treat hypertension are thiazide diuretics, loop diuretics, and potassium sparing diuretics, basically spironolactone, furosemide, etc. And the initial effect is through the reduction of plasma volume and cardiac output. Diuretics clears the sodium and water retention from the body, and thereby decreasing the volume of the blood and thus the cardiac output, which ultimately leads to decreased pressure in the walls, and this is how they act by as an antihypertensive agent. And long term effect, though, through decrease in the total peripheral resistance as well. That is how they decreases the blood pressure. Side effects associated are hypokalemia and postural hypotension. As soon as the person changes its posture from sitting to standing, suddenly there is a fall or the pooling of blood takes place in the legs, which leads to the hypotension with the change of posture. And impotency has been recorded in 22% of the patients with the use of diuretics as an antihypertensive agent. The uses are, they are used when for the hypertension there has been remarkable reduction in the cardiovascular morbidity and mortality rate, and they are inexpensive antihypertensive agents. They are basically used for the treatment of systolic hypertension and the hypertension in the elderly patients more than 55 years of age, and they have synergistic effects with other antihypertensive drug therapy. Beta blockers, they initially decreases the cardiac output followed by the reduction in peripheral vascular resistance, and other actions include the plasma renin activity resetting of baroreceptors, release of vasodilators, prostaglandins, and blockade of prejunctional beta receptors. This is how beta blockers act. Basically, they decreases the heart rate of the heart and decreases the workload on the heart. That is how it helps in improving the functioning of heart and decreasing the blood pressure by decreasing the peripheral resistance. Sympathetic nervous system attacking drugs. They are used in primarily in hypertension, and they are also relatively not expensive, and they provide cardioprotection through primary and secondary against the coronary artery diseases, whether it could be because of ischemia or any other reason. Then ACE inhibitors, they basically target the renin-angiotensin aldosterone system. ACE is an enzyme, that is angiotensin converting enzyme, which converts angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2. The ACE inhibitors like losartan, etc., they causes inhibition of angiotensin converting enzyme, which won't allow the conversion of angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2, because angiotensin 2 acts as a vasoconstrictor, and also it promotes the sympathetic nervous system activation, which leads to the vasoconstriction. This is how ACE inhibitors, they block the action of angiotensin 2 by not allowing the conversion of angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2, and this is how they blocks the vasoconstriction. And another dual effect is when angiotensin 2 has not been activated, it will not allow the aldosterone to release, thereby not allow the pooling of blood or the edematous like condition in the body, which increases the blood volume. These are the dual effects of ACE inhibitors. Then we have angiotensin receptor blockers. Angiotensin receptor blockers basically target angiotensin 1 and angiotensin 2 both. They won't allow their activation, so that angiotensin 1 won't convert into angiotensin 2, and angiotensin 2, when if it gets converted somehow, angiotensin 2 will not exert vasoconstrictory effect as well as activation of sympathetic nervous system, also not releasing the aldosterone. Thereby, it also blocks the action in multiple ways. That is why we have said earlier in the previous slides that angiotensin receptor blockers and angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, they both are equally potent in nature. Now the calcium channel blockers. Calcium channel blockers majorly are of three types: dihydropyridine derivative, non-dihydropyridine, and benzodiazepine. So nifedipine, amlodipine very common drug, then felodipine, nicardipine, and non-dihydropyridine derivative, that is phenylalkylamine, verapamil, and benzodiazepine, that is diltiazem. The basic mechanism of action is that it decreases the concentration of free intracellular calcium ion, result in decreased contraction, and thereby potentiate the vasodilatation. Diuretic effect through increase in the renal blood flow and glomerular filtration rate also have been observed, and it also causes the inhibition of aldosterone secretion, thereby decreasing the overall blood volume and hence the cardiac output. Side effects associated are flushing, headache, and lower limb edema, and mainly seen with the amlodipine. And non-dihydropyridine derivatives, on aggravation of heart failure and heart block, verapamil may cause constipation if used as an antihypertensive agent for longer time. They have been used in various other cardiovascular disorders like ischemic heart disease and elderly hypertensives and other peripheral vascular diseases. Now alpha blockers like prazosin, doxazosine, or the alpha 2 agonists like methyl dopa and clonidine, or the peripherally acting adrenergic antagonist reserpine, or the imidazoline receptor agonist, rilmenidine and monoxinidine. All these agents are very good antihypertensive in nature. Basically, they blocks the alpha 1 action of the receptors, and thereby decreasing the vasoconstriction in the vessels, and how this is how they decreases the blood pressure. The major side effects associated with alpha blocker, which is to be remembered, is postural hypotension. The patient on prazosin or terazosin or doxazosin for the treatment of hypertension, they maximum patients, they feel postural hypotension as soon as they stand up after sitting for a long time. Suddenly they fall down. That is because of the pooling of blood takes place in the lower limb area, and it takes few seconds to get into the circulation back. And although this postural hypotension gets revealed out, but there are chances, very bright chances, the patient could fall down after taking this kind of drug. So there are many other options available to treat the hypertension which are better than alpha blockers as well, like ACE inhibitors and ARBs. Another class is direct vasodilators, which are hydralazine, diazoxide and nitroprusside and minoxidil. These vasodilators, basically they dilate the vessels, and thus the blood flow inside the vessels, they won't exert that much of pressure as compared to the narrow vessels. So thereby they decrease the pressure on the walls and thus controls the high blood pressure. After pharmacotherapy, diet management is also essential in the treatment of hypertension. It is very much required to keep your blood pressure between 110 and 70 systolic and diastolic respectively. For that, the patient should follow the strict diet, like oatmeals, leafy vegetables, flax seeds, dark chocolate, berries, beets, garlic, fish and bananas. They are good for controlling the hypertension. There is one thumb rule to treat the hypertension, that is to avoid three poisons, white poisons. Those are salt, sugar and white flour. Low sodium diet should be followed. Say no to sugar and say no to white flour or maida. That will help you in controlling your hypertension in a very fruitful and better way. So in the nutshell, what we have collected with the presentation is that on the pathophysiological ground, if we uh, implement the pharmacotherapy, that will give better results as compared to the clinical outcome studies. Do not forget the lifestyle advice. If drug intervention is needed, follow the algorithm unless there are compelling indications to do. Most patients need more than one drug to control the blood pressure. Beta blockers do have a role in hypertensive therapy, but in limited circumstances. Then remember the treatment target, but bear in mind it won't be possible for all patients to achieve. Any lowering of blood pressure is beneficial, especially those at the highest baseline of cardiovascular disease risk. It accounts for the patient's tolerability and concordance when reviewing treatment responses. All the patients should have at least an annual review of the care and follow the proper diet plan. These are the things which comes under the nutshell of the hypertension pharmacotherapy as well as its pathophysiology. So I hope with this presentation there are a lot many things which get cleared about the disease. Thank you.